You feel it every time you buy groceries, every time you fill up your tank, every time you pay rent. Everything costs more, and your paycheck buys less. And you've been told it's because of supply chains, COVID, Putin, government spending, whatever boogeyman fits the narrative this week. But what if I told you the real reason your money's worth nothing isn't in Washington? It's on Wall Street, and it's not accidental, it's by design. The same banks and investment firms that crashed the economy in 2008 didn't just get away with it. They got richer, and they built a system that prints money for them while your savings evaporate. Stick around because by the end, you'll understand exactly who's pickpocketing you every single day, and why they're never going to stop unless someone makes them. Let's start with the basics everyone gets wrong. When people talk about inflation, they blame the government printing money. And yeah, the Fed prints. But here's what they don't tell you. The Fed doesn't decide where that money goes, Wall Street does. The Federal Reserve, despite the name, isn't actually federal. It's a private banking cartel. Created in 1913 on Jekyll Island by representatives from J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller, Rothschild banking interests, they sold it to Congress as a way to stabilize the economy, prevent panics, protect consumers, classic con job. What it actually did was give private banks control over the money supply, and they've been robbing you ever since. Here's how it works. When the Fed prints money, it doesn't go to you. It goes to banks, primary dealers, 24 Wall Street institutions that get first access to freshly printed cash at near zero interest rates. They take that money, leverage it up, 30 to 1, sometimes more, and they pump it into stocks, real estate, bonds, anything that inflates asset prices. That's why during COVID, when 40 million Americans lost their jobs, when people were lining up at food banks, the stock market hit record highs. Not because the economy was good, because Wall Street got trillions in free money and inflated their own portfolios while you got a $1,200 check and told to be grateful. Let's talk numbers because the scale is obscene. Between 2008 and 2022, the Fed's balance sheet went from under $1 trillion to $9 trillion. That's $8 trillion printed, created out of nothing. Where'd it go? Quantitative easing. The Fed buys bonds from banks, floods them with cash. Banks turn around and buy stocks, real estate, corporate debt. Asset prices explode. If you own assets, you get rich. If you don't, you get destroyed. Because when asset prices go up, everything else follows. Housing becomes unaffordable. Rent skyrockets. Food costs more because land costs more. Fuel costs more. Shipping costs more. And your wages, they stay flat. Because labor's the one thing they don't want going up. Here's the kicker. This isn't a side effect. It's the model. Wall Street makes money when asset prices inflate. They own the assets. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, the big three asset managers, they control over $20 trillion in investments. They own pieces of every major company, every index fund, every retirement account. When the Fed prints and asset prices rise, their portfolios balloon. They're not hurt by inflation. They profit from it. You're the one getting crushed because you don't own assets. You own dollars, and dollars are melting. Now let's talk about 2008, because that's when they perfected the scam. Banks gambled with your money, bundled garbage mortgages into securities, sold them as AAA-rated investments, and when it all collapsed, they didn't go to prison. They got bailouts. TARP, $700 billion in taxpayer money handed to the banks that caused the crisis. And you know what they did with it? Paid themselves bonuses. Goldman Sachs got $10 billion in bailout funds and gave out $16 billion in bonuses that same year. Let that sink in. They crashed the economy, you lost your house, your job, your retirement, and they got richer. But here's what's worse. The bailout wasn't the end. It was the beginning. After 2008, the Fed dropped interest rates to zero and started quantitative easing, printing money to buy bonds, propping up asset prices. They said it was temporary, emergency measures. That was 14 years ago. They never stopped, because Wall Street got addicted. 0% interest means free money. Borrow at nothing, invest in anything, pocket the difference. Companies stopped innovating and started doing stock buybacks. Borrow cheap money, buy your own stock, inflate the share price, executives get rich off stock options. Rinse and repeat. Over $5 trillion in stock buybacks in the last decade. Not building factories, not hiring workers, just financial engineering to pump stock prices while productivity stagnates. And housing. Oh man, housing's where they really screwed you. After 2008, Wall Street saw an opportunity. Millions of foreclosures, families kicked out. And who bought up all those houses? Blackstone, Invitation Homes, Pretium Partners. Private equity firms backed by Wall Street money buying tens of thousands of single-family homes, turning them into rentals and jacking up rent. In 2010, you could buy a house. By 2020, you're competing with billion-dollar hedge funds, paying cash sight unseen. They're not buying homes to live in. They're buying assets to extract rent from you forever. And when the Fed prints more money, they use it to buy more houses, pushing prices higher, locking you out permanently. You'll own nothing and be happy. Remember, that's not a conspiracy. That's the business model. Let's talk about inflation targeting, because this is where the lie gets naked. The Fed says they want 2% inflation, stable prices. But whose prices? Asset prices or consumer prices? Because here's the thing. When they print money and it goes to Wall Street, asset prices inflate 20, 30, 40%. Stocks, real estate, bonds, massive gains for people who own assets. But when that inflation trickles down to groceries, gas, rent, suddenly it's a problem. Suddenly they raise interest rates to cool things down. Translation: when Wall Street's profits are threatened, they hit the brakes. But when working people can't afford food, they shrug and say inflation's transitory. It's a wealth transfer from your pocket to theirs. Every single time, and it's not just domestic, this is global. The dollar's the world reserve currency. Every country holds dollars, trades in dollars. So when the Fed prints, it exports inflation everywhere. Developing countries get crushed. Their currencies collapse, food prices spike, people starve. And what happens? They borrow from the IMF, which is controlled by Wall Street interests. The loans come with conditions. Privatize your resources. Cut social spending. Open your markets to foreign investment, which means Wall Street gets to buy your country's assets for pennies while your population suffers. It's economic colonialism, and the Fed's the enforcement arm. Every time they print, someone somewhere loses everything, and Wall Street firms swoop in to pick the bones. Now here's where it gets really disgusting. They don't just profit from inflation, they cause it intentionally. Let me explain. Wall Street doesn't make money from stable markets. They make money from volatility, from booms and busts, from crisis. Because crisis creates opportunity. When everything's crashing, assets get cheap. And if you have access to unlimited Fed money, you buy everything at fire sale prices. Then when the Fed prints to stabilize things, boom, your assets triple in value. You just made billions off a crisis you helped create. It's a cycle. Inflate, crash, consolidate, repeat. And every cycle they own more and you own less. Look at COVID. Small businesses shut down. 40% of black-owned businesses closed permanently, Main Street destroyed. But corporate America? Record profits. Amazon, Walmart, Target. They got classified as essential, stayed open and crushed competition. Meanwhile, the Fed printed $4 trillion in 18 months, gave it to Wall Street. The S&P 500 doubled from March 2020 to 2021. Billionaire wealth increased by over $2 trillion during a pandemic. Not because they worked harder, because the Fed handed them free money while you got lockdowns and stimulus checks that didn't cover rent. They looted the economy in broad daylight and called it rescue. And let's talk about commodities, because this is where the inflation scam gets criminal. Wall Street doesn't just trade stocks. They trade food, oil, metals, essentials. Through commodity futures, they speculate on prices. But it's not just speculation. They manipulate. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, they own warehouses, storage facilities, supply chains. They can physically withhold supply to drive prices up. In 2011, Goldman got caught hoarding aluminum in Detroit warehouses, kept supply off the market, drove prices higher, made billions while manufacturers paid more and passed costs to you. It's not a free market. It's a rigged casino where they control the dice, the dealer, and the house. Oil prices? Same game. When you're paying $5 a gallon, it's not just Putin or OPEC. It's Wall Street speculators driving up futures contracts. They don't produce oil. They don't refine it. They just bet on it and move markets with sheer capital. Studies show speculation adds $1 or more per gallon. That's pure profit for traders while you bleed at the pump. And when politicians talk about windfall taxes or regulations, Wall Street lobbies kill it. They spend millions on campaigns, billions on lobbying. They own Congress. So nothing changes. You just keep paying. Food prices? Cargill, Archer Daniels Midland. These agribusiness giants backed by Wall Street money control global food supply. They trade futures, hoard grain, manipulate prices. In 2008, during the food crisis when people were rioting over bread, these companies made record profits. In 2022, same thing. Food prices spiked globally. People starved. And agribusiness profit margins hit all-time highs. They're not victims of inflation. They're the cause. They engineer scarcity, inflate prices, and extract maximum profit from human need. It's evil. There's no other word for it. Here's the part that should radicalize you. They've captured the regulators, the SEC, the CFTC, the Federal Reserve, staffed by Wall Street alumni. Revolving door. You work at Goldman, go regulate Goldman, then go back to Goldman with insider knowledge and connections. Gary Gensler, current SEC chair, former Goldman Sachs partner. Jay Powell, Fed chair, former Carlyle Group. Treasury secretaries, all Wall Street. They're not regulating the industry, they're protecting it. Writing rules with loopholes, settling fraud cases for fractions of profits, never prosecuting executives. In 2008, 0 bankers went to jail. 0. They stole trillions, and no one faced consequences. Because the system isn't broken, it's working exactly as designed. For them. So what do? First, understand this isn't capitalism. It's not a free market. It's a rigged system where Wall Street privatizes gains and socializes losses. They gamble with your money, and when they lose, you bail them out. When they win, they keep it all. That's not capitalism. That's theft with extra steps. And it only works because people don't understand how it operates. They blame immigrants, blame China, blame politicians. Meanwhile, Wall Street's robbing you blind and you're looking the other way. Second, your money's not safe in dollars. Inflation's a hidden tax. The Fed prints, your purchasing power drops. Savings accounts pay 0.5% while inflation's 8%. You're losing 7% a year doing nothing. That's intentional. They want you staying in dollars, losing value, while they're in assets, gaining value. If you can, buy assets, real estate, stocks, commodities, anything that inflates with the money supply. I know most people can't afford assets anymore because Wall Street bought them all. But even fractional shares, index funds, something that keeps pace with inflation. Because holding cash is financial suicide in this system. Third, decentralize. This whole scam works because money's centralized. The Fed controls supply, banks control access. But crypto decentralized finance, that's a threat to their model. Not because Bitcoin's perfect, it's not, but because it's outside their control. They can't print it, can't manipulate supply, can't bail themselves out with it. That's why they're trying to regulate it to death, create central bank digital currencies they control, because if people exit their system, their game's over. I'm not saying put everything in crypto, but diversifying out of their controlled system limits their power over you. Fourth, vote with your dollars. Stop feeding the beast. Every purchase from Amazon enriches Bezos, who pays less taxes than you. Every account with Chase funds the same bank that got bailed out in 2008. Credit unions, local banks, small businesses, they're not perfect, but they're not systemically looting you. Starve the machine where you can. It's not about perfection. It's about not being complicit when you have a choice. Fifth, make noise. This only works in silence. They count on you not understanding, not caring, not connecting dots. But when people get loud, things change. Occupy Wall Street scared them. GameStop, short squeeze scared them. When regular people coordinate and disrupt their game, they panic, because their power's not absolute. It's based on your compliance, your ignorance, your exhaustion. The moment you understand the scam and refuse to play, they lose leverage. Here's the brutal reality. Inflation's not coming down, not really, because Wall Street's business model requires it. They need asset prices inflating. They need you getting poorer while they get richer. It's not a bug, it's the feature. And unless there's a fundamental restructuring of how money works, who controls it and who benefits, this gets worse. Your children will be poorer than you. They'll own less, rent more, work harder for less. That's the trajectory unless something breaks. So if this made you angry, good. Because anger's the first step to action. Subscribe, share this, make it loud. Comment what you're doing to protect yourself because people need strategies, need hope, need to know they're not alone in this. Wall Street's counting on you staying quiet, staying confused, staying powerless. Prove them wrong. The game's rigged, but it only works if you keep playing by their rules, change the rules, break the game. And maybe, just maybe, we build something better from the ashes. Thanks for watching. Stay angry, stay informed, and remember, they're not smarter than you. They just had a head start in a rigged system. Time to even the odds.